our weight doesn't really show the true picture. It's just one kind of indicator into how we are doing. So I want to talk today about like the different ways that I've found helpful with my clients for measuring progress, and just, you know, depending on your goals and so forth, which ones you might want to use. So if you're working to increase your cardiovascular fitness, then you might want to do a cardiovascular test. So for instance, there is one called the 1 minute step test. There's the Rockport 1 mile test. There's also the Cooper 1 mile test. And they're just ways, I believe the YMCA came up with them years ago, some of them. And they're just different tests that have particular criteria. And based on your age and your ability, it measures your cardiovascular fitness. And you get like a kind of like a grade, if you like if it's good, if it's average, if it's poor. And then you know that's where your starting point is. So that's for cardiovascular tests. There's different tests for that. And you can also, if you have like a heart rate monitor, you can use that as well as a way to kind of like keep an eye on your heart rate and so forth. And you might find, like, say, for instance, if you do a 30-minute walk every day, after doing that for a couple of weeks, that your heart rate starts to kind of like, you know, not be as stressed doing it, and it starts to become easier. And that's another way you can monitor it. Those are very, very basic ways that you could do it. So if strength is one of your, improving your balance is one of your goals, another way that I always keep track of with my clients is how many repetitions did they do, and what was the quality of the movement like. So for instance, I have a woman that I've been training online. She's 59, and I've been keeping track of her repetitions. So for instance, when she first started, she couldn't do push-ups on the floor with straight legs. She was just doing them on her knees. And then over the month, she was able to do a full one with straight legs. And that's like a huge progress right there. So keeping track of what your movement quality was like and how much more strength you built up is huge. Also her balance, we've been keeping track of her balance as well. And there's been like a huge like progression in that as well. So there's like different ways. Those are like easy, simple ways that you can kind of help to monitor your progress. So obviously if your strength improves, if the quality of your movement improves, if you're finding that your heart is working less hard, if you have like a little like monitor, sometimes they have the watches where they have the monitors built in, and you're doing walking and your heart rate is starting to improve every day during that walk, then you know that's going to give you an indicator of, you know, this my body is starting to adapt to the stress. And that is the thing with training. We want to apply a little bit of stress, but not to the point where we injure ourselves. So that's always the little, you know, we have to balance that out. And the same thing is true with, you know, anything, like anything new that we ask our body to do, we have to balance it out. So make sure that we're not hurting ourselves and not causing ourselves to get injured. You want to find that right point to stress your body so that you don't cause yourself an injury, but you're able to, your body is then, after you have a little bit of stress, it's able to adapt and recover. And then it basically builds itself up even better and stronger from that point forward. So that's what training's about. It's about challenging the body. And by monitoring how many repetitions you do and monitoring, like, say, your cardiovascular fitness with some testing, you're going to be able to see how your body is sort of adapting over that period of time. So another, what I always do with my clients before they even start is I take resting assessments. So resting assessments are, you're basically in a relaxed state. I always try and do it at the same time in the morning, the same day of the morning with them, so it's consistent. They haven't done any exercise. They're just in a relaxed state. And so the first thing I always take is their resting heart measurement. So I've found that a lot of clients, especially over 50 and up, where they're over a period of a month or two, the majority, not everybody, but their resting heart rate starts to drop. And that is how many beats per minute your heart works, basically. And the idea is, as your body starts to adapt, your heart can start to work more efficiently, and your resting heart rate can start to drop as that happens. So your heart doesn't have to work so hard to be able to keep your body functioning and keeping you going when you're at rest, when you're not doing any strenuous activity. And that's can be huge for some people because, you know, maybe they have a history of heart disease on their side of the family. So having their resting heart rate be lower and not having it work so hard to be doing little things that they have to do to survive and live is, you know, for people who have heart issues and so forth, that's going to be like a huge, like, big thing, honestly. Just that. Never mind any of the other benefits. So resting heart rate is something I take. Before COVID, I would always take my clients' blood pressure. Now I ask my clients to go to their doctor and get it taken if they haven't seen their doctor for, you know, a year, because we should be getting checkups routinely with our doctor. It's not always, sometimes they tell us stuff we don't want to hear. So we don't always want to go, but it's important that we get, like, you know, a routine checkup, because they're monitoring our heart rate every year. And if it starts to spike, then that could be an indicator that your high blood pressure is basically linked to more increased risk of stroke and a whole bunch of other problems. So, you know, blood pressure is important. And I've actually had to turn clients away because their blood pressure was so high. Because, I mean, even if they were doing a plank and they, you know, holding a plank on the floor is not always an easy thing to do for some people, and even myself included. And that could be like the stress that causes them to, you know, have some sort of stroke or some sort of heart issue from that on. So I don't mess around with that. I always ask my clients to take their blood pressure. And now I don't take it myself, but I'll ask them to go, like, see their doctor and get it checked if it hasn't been done in a while. So the other indicator that I look for is, and the other things that I take into account is my client's weight, but weight isn't always the true picture. The more that we build muscle, the more we might start to tone up. And us women we're never going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, so don't worry about it. But the more that we build muscle and strength and so forth, the more probably our body is going to tone up, because most of us don't build muscle really easily. And as that happens, our weight might start to go up, but our waist measurements, our hip measurements and so forth might start to shrink. So weight isn't always like a great indicator, because fat per pound of weight is a lot less dense. Muscle per pound of weight is a lot less dense than fat. Fat takes up a lot more space for a pound of weight, whereas muscle takes up a lot less. So weight isn't always a true indicator, unless you're very overweight. Then obviously, you know, it can be a good indicator. And so it's one of the indicators I ask my clients to keep track of. But I don't put a ton of emphasis on it. It's just gives us an idea of how they're doing. Another thing that I always keep track of is their circumference measurements. So there's a particular way that I've like a system set up for recording them. But basically, you know, the measurement of their upper arm, their thigh, their calf, their waist, their hips, and so forth. And that gives us another way of measuring their progress, because like I said, the weight isn't always a ideal solution for measuring progress. It's just one indicator of a whole bunch. Another way of I also keep track of is your BMI. So BMI is a measure of your height and your weight. It's basically, I think it's your height divided by your weight multiplied by a constant. And BMI is just another quick indicator, but I don't like weight. It's just another indicator. It's not that it's more valuable than anything else, because there are cases where someone could be really short and very, very muscular, and because muscle is more like dense per like pounds than fat, what will happen is that they could be classed as obese, and they're not obese. They're just really muscular. They're like in fantastic shape, and everybody's frame can be different. You know, some women are more broader shoulders than others. Some are much narrower shoulders than others. Some women have wider hips. Some women don't. I mean, I know your bone structure to some degree, and I believe this. You may not, but I do believe that our bone structure to some degree, our frame, has something to do as well with our size as a person, and that's going to play a factor as well in your BMI. So a person who is at the same height as another one, but has like bigger bone structure, so they have much wider shoulders, and they have, say bigger hands or so forth, they're probably going to have a higher BMI than a person who's like just got a tiny bone structure. The people that they look small, like in every sense of the word, they're just tiny. So they're going to have that bigger person is going to, just because of their frame, even though they're the same height, it's probably going to have a higher BMI than that person who's much smaller. And it doesn't mean that that person with the bigger frame is any less healthier than the person who's tiny. It's all relative to us as individuals, and that's why I take I keep track of so many different things with my clients, because it really is down to you as an individual, your age, your genetics, your body type, and so forth. So I keep track of all of those. I also do a waist to hip ratio as well, because if your waist to hip ratio is unnaturally high, that can be an indicator of higher risk of diabetes and so forth. And that's basically keeping track of your belly fat. So how much fat you have in your midsection. And some people are naturally more of an apple shape, and they're not gonna, whereas some people are more of an hourglass shape. It really, I think a lot of it is genetics and your bone structure, and of course your lifestyle plays a huge factor as well, but there is a definite component of your genetics playing a part. So I'm hoping that this kind of gave you an idea of the different ways that you can monitor your progress. And what can often happen is people will start exercise, and we want our results to happen like right away, myself included. I'm going to include myself in that boat. And it would be wonderful if we could all just like have everything happen right away, but that isn't often how it happens. It's usually kind of like, for most of my clients, it's like things just start to shift, and a little bit in the first 2 weeks, But then I don't usually monitor them until like a month out. And that's when I start to notice like, okay, there's some real shifts happening. And then every month I just keep monitoring it.